In the meantime, lawmakers in the US have voted to move forward with investigative procedures that could lead to impeachment hearings on President Donald Trump. The committee voted along party lines, approved over unanimous Republican opposition, but will now allow the enhanced questioning of witnesses, the first step in a very lengthy process that could eventually lead to an impeachment hearing.
This committee is engaged in an investigation that will allow us to determine whether to recommend articles of impeachment with respect to President Trump. That is what we are doing. Some call this process an impeachment inquiry. Some call it an impeachment investigation. There is no legal difference between these terms, and I no longer care to argue about the nomenclature.
We'll get some analysis on this in a moment. First, Mike Hanna, our correspondent in Washington, has more.
The House Judiciary Committee has passed a resolution specifying the investigative procedures that could lead at some stage to the impeachment of President Trump. Now, it's agreed on a series of measures such as enhanced questioning of witnesses. Staffers would be allowed to question a witness for 1 hour after the members have completed their questioning. It also provides for the establishment of secret committees to hear evidence and, of course, the establishment of subcommittees to hear evidence. Now, the one caveat to all of this, and this pointed out by Republicans on the committee who voted against it, that these rules were already in place, or that the chairman had the power to impose these rules. Republicans using that as evidence that this is nothing more than political grandstanding, an attempt to keep the issue or the word impeachment within the public debate. Nonetheless, these investigative measures will be in place when the formal Trump chief of staff, campaign staff, gives evidence before the committee next week. Now, he's likely to be questioned by staffers after committee members have finished their questioning. This will be the first test of the rules that are now in place, which Republicans, I must repeat, say have always been in place anyway.
With us on Skype now, Joel Rubin, who is president of the Washington Strategy Group, Security and Foreign Policy Strategic Advisory. Joel, there's a lot of, could happen, might lead to starting down the path here. With all that in mind, how do you sort of categorize today's developments? How big, how significant?
You're right. This is a could and maybe will occur moment, but certainly from a House Democratic perspective, it's a significant break from where Democrats have been up until this point. Over the summer, and it's important to note this, over the summer, the majority of House Democrats came on board with the idea of impeachment. So right now in the House chamber, the Democrats are in support of it. So this process enables a more robust and intrusive investigation to occur towards potentially that end.
But how do you do that? When I say you, I mean these Democrats have come on board. How do they do that when their leader, Nancy Pelosi, has been quite opposed to the whole idea? She said it publicly, in fact, that she doesn't think they should go down the impeachment road.
Yes, Speaker Pelosi has been the one who has kind of tempered this because she understands that still in poll after poll, the majority of Americans did not support a full impeachment. But Democrats and Democratic voters do by 2/3 in terms of the latest polling. So that means that she's in a bind and she wants to see what comes out. So she has pushed the process, but not killed it. If something comes out in these hearings, in these discussions over the next month or two, that really changes the public mood, that demonstrates that there is more there that can be used politically, and that's her ultimate calculus, politically, for the House to not only move on impeachment, but then force it into the Senate. That will tip her scales in judging it. But right now, she's not there.
I'm glad you mentioned the Senate, because that's the point I always come back to. What's the point? If the Senate is controlled by the Republicans still, it's never going to get through there.
Yeah, there are several different points. At the core, the majority of the House members that say they support impeachment say they do because they believe that the president has violated the Constitution and committed high crimes and needs to be held accountable. And they're not concerned about the idea that he won't be convicted in the Senate, which means removal from office. On a political level, many Democrats are saying that if the president's impeached in the House and the vote goes to the Senate, vulnerable Republicans will have to then go on record in supporting the president or not. And if they do, it will help the Senate Democrats take back the Senate in 2020. So there's a lot of that underway right now. Nobody at this moment believes the Senate will actually convict the president if he's impeached by the House.
One final thing I want you to clear up just for our international viewers, and that is, seems strange to ask this now, but in the United States, what impeachment actually is. Because in other parts of the world, if you're impeached, then you're gone. That's not quite the case in the US, is it?
Yes, thank you. It's a bicameral system, meaning we have two chambers of Congress. So the House has the duty to conduct an inquiry, an investigation, and then impeach. And if they do, which means the majority supports removal from office, that then gets referred to the Senate, who then does a trial where the Supreme Court Chief Justice goes and conducts a trial, and the Senate then chooses whether or not to convict that impeachment process or the president who was impeached. And at that stage, he's removed from office. If they vote down, and in the case of President Clinton, the Senate voted to not remove him from office, to not convict, then the president stays in office, even though he was technically impeached by the House of Representatives.
Important thing to clear up, isn't it? Thank you for all of that. Joel Rubin in Washington.
Thanks.